This is an important step in putting the lid on Iran's nuclear program. But we have to treat this as an ongoing enforcement effort, which I certainly strongly support, and as president would be absolutely devoted to ensuring that the agreement is followed.
Of course, when we're talking about Iran, politics a big part of it, and Hillary Clinton, as you just heard, supporting the Iranian nuclear deal, but acknowledging you got to keep an eye on Iran, given their lack of trustworthiness over the years. Republicans, especially the ones running for president, as you'd expect, they hate the deal. Many conservatives saying even negotiating with a country like Iran is a mistake and shows weakness. Now, this isn't new. Let's take a walk down memory lane. Ronald Reagan, remember him, the great communicator, Republican icon? He was blasted by his own party back then when he negotiated with Gorbachev over nukes. They compared him to Neville Chamberlain, the guy who appeased the Nazis. Hardline hawks say diplomacy, weakness, but do American voters agree? I'll show you some poll numbers in a minute, but first let's bring in our panel. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author. Brad Gersman, political consultant, founding partner of Gotham Government Relations. And Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. There's a lot of moving parts with this. Before I get to the policy part, there's legitimate questions that maybe we could have gotten a better deal, which is the arms embargo stuff. Why exactly did we lift that? The ones who benefit from that, you can certainly argue, are Russia and China, and the ones who are most livid are Israel and Saudi Arabia, supposedly, you know, our allies versus the folks we have some of the biggest problems with. Comparatively, we didn't get hostages back, and I can poke a lot of holes in this, but is America safer today, Dominic, if this becomes basic policy versus if we left it alone by itself?
I believe firmly most Americans will agree with Mrs. Clinton that this is an ongoing process, one that has to be monitored. I mean, the folks on the right, especially the presidential candidates, we're in an election year, so everything's going to be ratcheted up times 10, and that's what we're seeing. And anything that this president do, if he puts on blue socks tomorrow, that will be wrong based on the candidates of the other party.
Well,
so
Brad, to that end, though, Netanyahu, as expected, said this is not only the worst deal he's ever heard here, but stunningly, historically bad. Lawmakers with Jewish constituents, take New York here. Senator Schumer, we go to some of the New York City congressional delegation. I read some of their statements today. To say tepid is putting it politely. At the end of the day, do they get behind the president, or do they say, this is not good for Israel, we can't support?
I think that they are testing the waters right now as we speak with their constituents, with the special interest group, Jewish special interest groups, to determine if, in fact, they should stand behind the president, or they should stand in the middle ground, or they should just oppose this. But I really think different than a lot of people. I think the agreement itself brings us closer to war than no agreement at all. And you'll say, how is that possible?
How is that possible?
Thank you for asking. That's possible because now we've put together strict guidelines as to what we're going to do. Okay, that you, Iran, can't do the following things, and if you do, we have to take very quick, have a quick reaction to that. And I think that's going to make us, put us at a standoff within months. I don't think this agreement doesn't last as far as you can throw it.
You know, Andrew, while I'm a little bit more optimistic than them, here's the part that got kind of glossed over today. What's Iran's really the biggest threat, I think, to us as it relates to stability in the Middle East? I think even more than their nuclear ambitions, which they've had forever and haven't been able to deliver, is their state sponsors of terrorism. They are the ones who've got their fingers in every trouble spot there is in the Middle East, funding directly or indirectly, let alone providing arms and whatever else. How much do you think this agreement curbs their destabilization in the Middle East?
I think you're looking at a long-term goal here for the deal, which is to basically bring Iran back into the League of Nations that can be dealt with, and hopefully Western influences can penetrate and lead to change within the country itself. I think that's the long-term 20, 30, 40 years down the road goal. In the short term, the hardline government that's currently in place in Iran is going to keep doing what they're doing, which is, and one of the reasons why they wanted nukes in the first place is to protect their interest in that regard. They become less of a target if they've got nukes, and so they can't be attacked. With respect to what Brad was saying, I respectfully disagree. Only because the first step in all of this isn't we're going to war if they violate the deal, it's that the sanctions come back. And having tasted the sanctions on an international level for as long as they have, that's what Iran really doesn't want. The sanctions were killing the country.
But do you think
and the verification is going to be the thing that determines how it's received. Iran's been, the #1 enemy for Americans for 35 years. So it's going to take a long time for people to get a sense that they're trusting it. How the verification process is sold and packaged will determine whether the public accepts it.
But I agree with everything you said, Andrew, except the fact that once the sanctions return, okay, the next step will be major rhetoric and action by the Iranian government, and this thing will quickly accelerate
But that's
to
what
us
we've had for the
having
last
our
35
Navy
years.
right off
It's
the
been that way
border
for
of Iran.
35 years.
I wanted to show you a poll, Don, because we're talking, you said before, I think the position staked out by Hillary is going to be the popular one. Now, this doesn't rebut what you said, but when asked if people trust Iran to basically follow the elements of the deal here, you can see the numbers there yourself here. People outright, 55% said nothing at all. These guys are going to lie through their teeth, and then only a third of them say maybe a little bit. I don't know who believes they trust them a lot, but my point is, with that on the table, the bigger question for a commander-in-chief, we talked about what happened to Reagan when he even talked to Gorbachev back in the day. His own party called him, basically an appeaser. In today's day and age, I can make two arguments. You got a war-weary public. They're just tired of going off around the world and going to the Middle East and fighting somebody else when they don't like the results when it comes back. Afghanistan, Iraq, you know the drill. But conversely, if you're a president and you're talking to the bad guys or outsourcing to people, they think you're either naive or you're weak. Politically, what's more dangerous in election year to be? Somebody who's a warmonger or somebody that they perceive, doesn't have the guts here to go take on or continue the hardline approach with somebody like an Iran?
Each situation, Richard, has to be looked at differently. We just can't say that if you're a person for war, that's always good or bad, or if you're a person that's willing to reach out. It depends on each situation. There is a perception out there that this president, especially if you talk to the right, that this president is weak. But I just feel it's a bit refreshing to have a chief executive of the country that is doing things a little differently. I mean, was the past working with the policy with Iran? Was that working?
Nope.
It wasn't working. So if he's trying something different, and if it's hopefully the lifting of the sanctions will work in terms of keeping them in line, but if not, they'll go right back, and hopefully it won't lead to further action. But what's wrong with, the folks on the right, they're not being realistic. I don't even think they buy their own rhetoric, to be honest with you. If they were the chief executive.
No, they do. The people on the right, and this is where I think the nation is going. They're looking for tougher talk. They're looking for somebody to say, "Don't worry, we're going to get America. We're going to empower America more so overseas than ever before." And the reason why, it's only one reason
what
why.
happens when the
It's the
talk
destabilization.
doesn't work?
Well, the point is nobody's asking that right now. We're just in campaign mode. Look who's getting all the attention. Donald Trump. What's he saying? He's throwing the red meat out there. I don't want to move on to other topics, but he's throwing
we're going to get to him and El
meat out.
Chapo in a little bit here, but I want you at home to weigh in on the conversation we've had at the table and go over to Twitter and Facebook and give us your take on it. Is the Iranian nuclear agreement, at the end of the day, and you got to look ahead, I grant you, do you think it's a good deal or a bad deal for the U.S.? Put yourself in the lawmaker's position. In 60 days, they got to work something out here. Should they get behind it or oppose it? All right, when we come back, we'll get much closer to home here. Eric Garner's family just agreed to a multi-million-dollar settlement with the city, but they still want more. They want justice. We're going to hear from his mother. That's straight ahead.